Okay, at the end of lecture 26 part 2, this is what we had on the screen. This is now the beginning of lecture 26 part 3. And what I asked you to do at the end of the other lecture was to go ahead and try to work out the amount of carbon dioxide, the number of grams of carbon dioxide that would be formed in this case when you react 55 grams of butane with 45 grams of oxygen. And before you could start the problem, what you had to figure out was which one of the two reactants is the limiting reagent. Which one are you going to run out of first? And by looking at the mole ratios of what was available compared to what was needed, you recognize that you need a mole ratio of 6.5 to 1 oxygen to butane in order to react away everything, but you only have a ratio of 1.5 to 1. So that means that you don't have enough oxygen to react away that much butane. So oxygen wins your limiting reagent. So what you should have done was set up the problem like this and started with what was given. In this case, the given is the oxygen because that's the limiting reagent, and gone through your normal conversion sequence, converting to moles of oxygen and then to moles of carbon dioxide using the reaction stoichiometry, and then to grams of carbon dioxide to come up with 38.5 grams of carbon dioxide formed in that particular reaction. And as I promised you when we started this problem, I told you there's another way to work it also. And if ratios always give you a problem, another way you can work it is just go ahead and work out the full sequence for both reactants. In this case, you start with the given 45.5 grams of oxygen, and you end up going through your conversion sequence to get 38.5 grams of carbon dioxide. You can also run through the whole thing starting with the other reactant, 55.5 grams of butane, convert to moles of butane, then moles of carbon dioxide, and then grams of carbon dioxide. And in this case, you would predict that you would make 168 grams, of carbon dioxide. I keep doing that, of carbon dioxide as your product. But we know that, what this tells you is that when you work it this way, when you say I have 45.5 grams of oxygen, you assume you have plenty of butane to react away all that oxygen. You'd get 38.5 grams of carbon dioxide because the carbon in the carbon dioxide comes from the butane. In this case, when you work it this way and you say, okay, I'm starting with 55.5 grams of butane, you must assume that you have plenty of oxygen around to react away all that carbon in that amount of butane, because the oxygen in the carbon dioxide comes from oxygen. The carbon comes from butane. And in this case, you would predict that you'd have 168 grams. Well, to decide using this method which one is your limiting reagent, it's the one that produces the least amount. So this is too much. It's impossible to produce that much. You don't have enough oxygen. So in this case, you also would predict oxygen is the limiting reagent, and the amount that you make is 38.5 grams of carbon dioxide. Either way is perfectly acceptable.